Hola, amigos. I'm Sean Swetnam. This is the Samson Strength Collective, Coach Collective. We've got Dr. Ramsey Nijem, Coach Nijem, a.k.a. Coach Ram. I mean, you got all kinds of names, I'm sure. You're the strongest Jayhawk in the house, right? Mr. Running 26 miles an hour. Like, what was the deal with that? Because I just saw that recently.
Yeah.
What are you running against, a truck, or what was the deal with that?
That was, I have a twin brother back home.
Okay.
And so we were out for a hike, but, I'm just kind of a jokester. So anytime I saw somebody, somebody, it started as just getting some conditioning. I was like, well, let me get, 10 sprints throughout this, 45-minute hike. And then I pretended to race a car. He called me slow, and you know how it is. So I told him,
you got a brother like that. You gotta let him know, right?
That's right. Put the car on the line, man. Let's get it going. Yeah, that was one of those few times you're out with the family hiking, and brought that one to us. So
we got a lot of time for that now, though. So are you in Kansas right now? Right, you're originally from California, right? So you did a setup where you were at UC Santa Barbara, assistant strength conditioning coach there, and then from there you got your master's over at Fullerton, of course. Came on back, went to Santa Barbara City College, strength and conditioning coach. And then you get a phone call. Next thing you know, you're with the Kings.
Yeah.
During that, you're at, is it Rocky Mountain University where you're getting your doctorate online? Yeah. That's got to be crazy. And then next thing you know, now you're in Kansas with the Kansas University. So can you fill in the blanks with that? I mean, that's a skeleton of what happened over the last X amount of years. But,
yeah. So that's the skeleton of the last really 10 years. And so, born and raised in California. Never in a million years would have, thought I'd be a strength coach. I didn't even know that was a job until I was about, 19 years old, 18 years old. I went to high school where we didn't have strength and conditioning coaches, right? Your basketball coach just put you through whatever workout that, maybe he did back in the day. Right. In my high school coach was, really good at basketball. And so been around some trainers, of course, spending time at the D1 level and I think had some 10-day contracts in the NBA and stuff. So kind of knew enough to get it done. But, certainly wasn't aware that it was a job that could, sustain your life. So, I guess from there, college, undergrad, like you mentioned, that's where I, like most people's kind of progression, personal trainer, turn to strength and conditioning, train athletes, college athletes, turn to pros, train pros. And then from there, it was, I was fortunate. I was an assistant in the NBA when I was 23. I was the head guy when I was 25. And so by the time I'm 28, I just signed an extension with the team. And so I was going into kind of my second contract on that front, and got a random phone call from Coach Self here at University of Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawks. And, from there, it wasn't something that I was seeking. I wasn't seeking to leave. I loved what I was doing. I'm from the Bay Area. Sacramento is very close. It's a great community. It's grown. It's affordable. It has a lot of, pros there in that position. And probably, most relevant is I was comfortable, right? Like, you're the head strength coach, I signed an NBA contract for what, whatever that is as a strength coach, was able to buy my first home. And so it was just a comfortable time in your life, and you achieve things faster than maybe you thought they would. And so you become content with some of those. And then I know where this thing came, and, it was a risk, but ultimately it was something that I knew was great for me and my career, and ultimately where I wanted to go, the opportunity to learn from a Hall of Fame coach, not just the game of basketball, but learn about coaching, right? Like, what does it actually mean to coach a human being? Be able to actually do those things at probably a higher level in the college atmosphere, create more impact. There was just a lot of pros for it, and probably the most compelling or what resonated the most with me was, I'll be the first guy to tell people to take a risk, especially when you're younger. Take risk if you want to make things happen or accomplish things in your life. And here it was an opportunity for me to take a risk, and, I would have felt like a hypocrite to turn that one down. So, here I am now in Lawrence, Kansas, and did my first season last year, and that went well. And now, sitting here ready to try to kick off the second season.
Right. I mean, did great last year. With this year coming up, what's a day in the life for you right now with the pandemic, getting guys integrated? and then of course your new position within the panel over at Kansas. So just some light on what you got going on right now.
Yeah, got a couple guys in town. The rest of them trickling in this week. So next week will kind of be full operation mode with fully training in basketball and everything that goes into all of that. And I'm, like every strength coach in the country, I can't wait. We're all chopping to get back to coaching and working with players and creating impact. So all that's coming. You mentioned kind of the advisory board position that I just took on. Right. Dr. Fry here and at the University of Kansas. Obviously, Dr. Fry is a world leader in sports science and strength and conditioning and world renowned and highly respected. And coming here, I knew there would be an opportunity to do some things with him. And so we connected last year, right when I got here. We talked about, what the potential could be to maybe work on some things together. I brought in an intern that he recommended. So I brought in somebody that Dr. Fry actually came and brought to the office and introduced and recommended. And so that was probably the first kind of initiation of a relationship. And obviously now trying to kind of just continue to help, I guess, and bridge the gap between research and application, and specifically in basketball, obviously, where I've spent the majority of my career.
Right. I mean, that's fantastic. With the research side that you've been talking about, obviously there's a little bit difference in the MBA and then you go to a D1 college. It doesn't matter where you are in the country. It's a little bit different for sure, right? Mm-hmm. So with your dissertation on like load management, looking at acceleration, decelerations, possibly even like how many jumps there are per game, are you able to access that kind of data compared to when you were with the Kings?
The short answer is no. Okay. The great thing about the NBA as far as data collection goes is support staffs don't have to do anything to get the game data. Like, the cameras are already set up. The spreadsheet are already emailed to you. So there's really nothing you do. It's not aware the players just play the game. And so obviously colleges don't have a system like that. And there's, limitations in what could be worn during games and all that stuff. So, again, short answer, no. But, you still got to find ways to understand. Ultimately, to me, what all that is just stimulus and response, right? What are we asking our athletes to do and how are they responding to that stuff? And you got to find different ways to gather insights. And so, we try to go about it that way a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to collect data for the most part, but also you want to know where your guys are at. Are they, beat up? The guys that are getting minutes, of course, are getting their minutes. The guys that are not getting minutes, who are working towards that, they need some extra work here on the side as well, right? So what kind of methods are you using? Are you just like eyeballing it a little bit? I don't want to say that you're eyeballing it, but like there's got to be some kind of, and I don't want to get into like your secret sauce or whatever Coach Ram is doing, of course. But are you looking at like what they're doing? Are you kind of, I mean, you're at every game, of course. You're at every time they put their shoes on. So what's the concern with you as a strength and conditioning coach, but also just someone who's managing stress, right, within their sport? There's a lot going on. They're jumping, they're rebounding, they're moving around a lot. There's a lot of activity. But also, you warm up and then they do the national anthem or what have you. And then there's 30 minutes before tip off. And then you're kind of moving around, and maybe a guy on the bench doesn't come in for another half an hour. And then he's expected to start shooting and get hot, right? And or maybe play some, whatever, right? So it's a lot, right? There's a lot of variables in a chaotic sport like basketball. So what's your methodology or what's your thought process on just making sure that everyone is wholesomely healthy and just making sure that they're feeling good and fresh?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is, relationships. I'm probably a broken record on that front, but I truly believe that if you have a good relationship with your athletes, then it opens up transparent communication. And, so one thing that I did when I got here, probably through some learnings from, my previous years in the NBA and what I thought worked and what I thought didn't, and how I thought some things maybe brought a little bit of value, but the opportunity costs weren't worth it. And so one thing that I did when I got here is I just asked our team, I said, hey, fellas, here's something that we did with Sacramento Kings, and I want to know what you guys want to do here. And so it was, for example, hey, we took wellness surveys every day, right? Every day that we saw a player, we would take a survey to try to gather some information as far as their subjective recovery goes, or readiness to perform. And so I said, look, we can do those things here, but the reality with most of that stuff is what you're doing is you're collecting a sample of data consistently to get a robust data set and to a point where outliers actually inform insights, right? That's kind of the general over, thought process there. And so for me, when I got here, it was, hey, do I need to collect all of that data to hopefully get outliers, or can we just have this super open, transparent, constant communication that you're just always telling me how you feel? Every time you walk in the weight room, I'm asking, you're telling me if something's sore, you let me know. If for whatever reason, I'm reading body language, I get to know you more. So, earlier you talked about like eyeballing it, and the reality is like, yeah, that's basically what I do now. I eyeballed it with an understanding and an agreement between our team and myself and each player and myself that we're going to constantly communicate. And so, and then it's a judgment call, right? Within the weight room, someone says they're sore. Okay, well, when are we sore? Maybe that's the goal, right? There's often times where they come and tell me they're sore and I say, good, that's what we're looking for. I programmed that hoping that would happen. Now, if I programmed something and I didn't want that to happen, and now you're coming and you're telling me you're beat up or you're sore, and I didn't want that to happen, well, now we got to look at the programming. Now we got to look at what you're doing, on the court, extra shots, extra this, and then how do we start to create a system around avoiding those if that's the goal, right? Again, there's times where we want, I think, to run athletes down a little bit, and there's times where we want to maintain freshness and recovery. And so, it's an eyeball test mixed with some informed, decision-making mixed with trust and transparency and constant communication. And ultimately an understanding on both sides that like, I might make mistakes when I program something and you might end up a little bit more sore than I wanted. That's okay. Like, I'm not perfect. I tell my guys, like, I'm not perfect, but you're damn sure going to turn that ball over in the next game or travel or miss a shot you shouldn't, right? So you're not perfect either. And so mistakes in our approach and our programming is to me is that, right? It's me turning the ball over, but everyone turns the ball over. It's okay. Just don't constantly do it, right? So learn from those mistakes and get better every time.
So it's being good at being human, basically.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, right?
I think that gets overlooked.
That won't sell DVDs.
No, I know. I mean, you can't. Don't even get me started on that. If there even is such a thing as a DVD anymore, right? But right. I mean, I think that gets overlooked so much, right? Where we're talking about language and we're talking about just reading, looking a guy in the eyes and saying, "Hey, man, you're looking a little glazed over today. You do not sleep last night. Did you not eat enough?" Are you pretty loose in the weight room, like in terms of style, like turning the rap music up, turning the music up, letting them roll into it? Are they snacking in between? Are they like, what's your culture within the weight room when you guys are getting after it?
Yeah, I mean, no snacking, no
okay.
phones, focused, but I think enjoyable, I guess. If I had to put, some adjectives to what I try to bring, I think, my guys know I want them focused, if we're starting to lift at 2:00, don't show up at 2:01 and don't show up at 2:00 without your shoes on. So our guys know, like, when we start a lift, it's on time. Everybody's shoes are tied. Everybody's standing up. We're looking at the whiteboard. We're ready to go on time, just to kick it off. But beyond that, I think we got to create environments that they want to be in, especially at the college level, because they're in our weight room a lot. We train a lot. And so because of that, like, I want ultimately the weight room to be a place that you do want to come into, you do want to enjoy. When you're walking into the weight room, if immediately your energy decreases and your body language drops, that's a problem. And with basketball players, that's easy to get to because they inherently don't want to work outside the court, right? Like, lifting weights is not a culture within basketball. The transfer of it is not as apparent as football or rugby.
Right.
Even baseball, probably, I would argue, right? Like, baseball's pretty straightforward too. Like, you got to hit a ball. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand rotational and velocity and power. Like, those things make sense because if I hit this ball harder, it goes farther. In basketball, it's a little bit different, right? You don't throw the ball harder. And so because there's that gap between transfer, it's on us as strength coaches to bridge it, to get them to buy in. I think making sure that it's enjoyable and enjoyable process they want to be a part of is probably the quickest way to do it. So I'm if there's a spectrum of like drill sergeant, strength coach, and laid back, not giving a damn strength coach, I'm probably somewhere in the middle. And and then you got to pick your battles. You got to understand. You got to read body language. You got to be good at being a human, right? You got to read body language. There's days where I might want to jump a player for something, but if I'm reading his body language and knowing he's already going through it, or knowing that maybe a coach already got on him about something that day or yesterday, or, you know, you got to try to appreciate all the context before you decide, you know, a course of action as far as holding people accountable and all of that. But yeah, I would say, you know, hopefully it's fun. Hopefully they enjoy it. But ultimately, you know, in appreciation that we're in here to get better, and help them reach their goals. I think as long as they know it's coming from the place of like, I want you to be the best basketball player you can be. And because I want you to be those things, I'm going to have to hold you accountable. And once they understand that and appreciate that, then I think it becomes a much better environment, because they'll get upset at me, of course, at times when I get on their ass, but they know that it's coming from a place of their best interest.
It's tough love for sure, but it's, again, their best interest, like you just said. I come from a background where my dad played basketball at the University of Maryland. And so I'm from PG County, where basketball is religion at that point within Maryland. And it's the same concept that you were just talking about. Like if you're playing games, you're playing pickup, whether it's 3-on-3, 5-on-5, whatever, that's your conditioning, that's your training. You don't need to be lifting weights for the most part. When my dad played in the 70s, when I started training people, why are you training people? Just go out and play the sport. So coming up with that culture and being in that space, I of course broke his heart and played baseball at George Mason and then UMBC. And then same thing with my my father-in-law. He's 6'9", played at USC, played at St. Mary's, and his idea with basketball is just go play basketball, man. Go play the sport. You need some sport mastery, of course, but sometimes you get lost in the weeds a little bit with, you know, little nuances of things that just, you know, maybe you should be working on them. Maybe they're individual, but at the same time, you never know where you are in that training period. So as long as they know where you're going, you don't need to explain the dorsiflexion and in the ankle when we're doing, you know, A-skips or whatever we got going on. It's very difficult to, especially for a college athlete, and this is where my next question goes, with the buy-in of what's going on. You know, you're building some rapport with guys, you're joking around with them, you're rubbing elbows. Those guys eventually, I would like to guess, would like to be in the NBA within a couple years. So from you being in that NBA culture, being in that space for a couple years, and then now being in Kansas, do you find that that's easier for them to build rapport with you? Because you've been there, you know what it's like from that point of view, that perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. You know, it's one thing if somebody says, you know, in the NBA this, and especially myself, I didn't play basketball at a high level, you know, especially like Kansas. So there's already a disconnect there. And so the way I have to bridge that disconnection is by letting them know, you know, they know already, but I think leaning on my experience in the NBA, leaning on some of the players that they know, right? Like I was fortunate or misfortunate, depending on how you look at it, to train a very young basketball team in the NBA. It's great because because it's almost like college atmosphere. You get to hold them accountable. You get to build character. You get to build habits that hopefully turn into professional habits that earn them a second contract and all of those good things. The bad thing about being young is it typically means you're not going to win a lot of games. And so, but leaning on some of those guys because they know those young guys, right? They know who Marvin Bagley is. Some of them played in the AAU circuits with him and De'Aaron Fox and, you know, Justin Jackson and Frank Mason, who came here, and Ben McLemore, who came here. Like Ben's probably, you know, obviously a little bit older and removed, but some of those other guys, you know, they're around the same cohort. They've seen them at the tournaments. They know. And so, you know, there's times where, you know, players say like, yo, I know Marvin and he called me about you. And like, okay, great. That's positive because now Marvin has helped me with the buy-in, right? These other players have informed our players before I even got here, like, yo, you got a good one. And so that helps. And ultimately, you know, I think they know what I was doing there and what I was able to try to bring and accomplish. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it helps tremendously. And but at the same time, you want to balance it, right? It's not like you want to shove it in their face every day. Like, I worked at the NBA. Like, that doesn't have any, like I'm here to train these guys now. Like, what I used to do is only relevant in as much as they can help me help you, right? And that's all we want to do. You know, that's all I want to use it for, is just to inform what I do with them to help them ultimately get to the next level.
Right. I mean, I couldn't put it any better than that. You know, it's where you are is what matters the most. Exactly. By far. Exactly. Now, with you being in Kansas, is there with your academia background, is there something that you're looking forward to within the realm of studying certain qualities? I know you've done some stuff with bands and chains, of course, accommodating resistance and things of that nature. Is there anything on the horizon that you're getting into lately?
From a research side, you know, obviously just joining that advisory board is the first step. And me and Dr. Five already had, you know, a 90-minute Zoom call and a bunch of the ideas that we think we could pursue and how we can work together on pursuing those opportunities. So, you know, I think there are some things definitely that are in mind and on the table for, you know, kind of my involvement within that advisory board and being part of obviously a bigger research team. And hopefully that means that, you know, some things are coming down the pipeline within the next year or so. You know, it's not something where, you know, I'm going to go head on and try to just get my name on research papers. You know, that's certainly not the goal.
Right.
But if it helps to influence some of the studies that, you know, the lab pursues and decides to investigate, you know, that would ultimately be the goal. Is because ultimately what the goal of the entire kind of board and my involvement would be is like, how do we improve our understanding of training basketball players? And there's a lot of general concepts out there, especially with, you know, social media. It's so easy to throw ideas out and they catch traction and people run with it, which is, you know, it's certainly positive at times. But at the end of the day, if we want to be confident in what we do and what we're trying to accomplish and how, right, the methods of those things, then we probably want to put some empirical evidence, you know, to those methods and see how good they are. And, you know, sometimes, you know, practitioners are ahead of the literature, and you ask a bunch of strength coaches and they'll believe that any day. But oftentimes that's not the case. And so I think ultimately it's just trying to really get a better understanding of how to train athletes and ultimately basketball players, you know, most relevant to what I do.
Right. And then with that, I mean, you got a lot of stuff you're juggling around, right? One of the best basketball teams in the nation, arguably the best basketball team in the nation. I'm not trying to butter you up.
Just
right?
college.
But,
just college. That's right? College basketball.
Yeah, you never know. It gets crazy. With the scheduling and everything with you guys, of course, with the research and the advisory board, a lot of stuff to juggle. Obviously, like you mentioned before, taking a risk. It's not easy when you're getting into new shoes and you're filling them out. What does your guys' schedule look like this year? Has anything changed? Is there anything that you think that you foresee possibly being a disruption? Obviously, we're in a pandemic. We're trying to figure it out as we go along. But competition-wise for the season, what have you guys seen so far that you can share at least?
You know, I'm not even sure. I haven't even taken a look or even those conversations. If they're being had, you know, they're not getting to me.
Okay.
The coaches obviously know some of that stuff, and some of the college stuff is set, you know, actually based on contracts. So like, you know, it's public information that we were supposed to play Mizzou, I think, for 3 years in a row. So I couldn't even tell you any of those things. You know, but as far as kind of the pandemic goes, I know that there's certainly going to be changes to how things are done and how they're accomplished. And hopefully, you know, knock on wood, that it goes relatively smoothly and we're able to have as much of a normal season as we could. But, you know, I don't even think the NCAA has ruled on fall sports yet. And so, you know, that's got to happen before, obviously, they get into winter sports and spring sports. And so basketball for, I think, the current, you know, few weeks or hopefully not months is on the back burner, I think, as they try to figure out fall sports. But yeah, I mean, the hope is that we can play the game. And I think that's, you know, if we can accomplish that any which way is positive. Fans, no fans, you know, how much testing when we do it, what happens if someone gets, like, all of those things probably have to be ironed out a bit more. But, you know, as long as we could check the ball up, I think that that's a positive for sure.
Right. I mean, we're seeing it in baseball right now where, you know, down in Miami, they're having trouble with a lot of guys testing positive. So just trying to make sure that the parameters for everything are set so we can actually, you know, let the guys do what they're there to do.
Right.
And this is the hard part too. How has your ideas of preparation changed for them? And I'm talking like mentally and physically, because this is like a layoff where it's just they're watching some games on TV and things of that nature too. But it's just like, you don't want them growing morbid from just hanging around. They're still shooting around, you know, they're able to go outside and, you know, get some work in, but still, how are you keeping them sharp physically and mentally within this weird period?
Yeah. You know, like I said, guys are getting back this week. So I'm going to operate under the assumption that we're at basically a quote unquote block zero, if you will, and it builds from there. They've been sent programs, of course, and we've been communicating and all that good stuff. But, ultimately everybody was in a different situation. At times gyms weren't even accessible. We did everything we could to try to accommodate their situation with, the virtual or the remote programming. We sent them some items that they would be able to use and all of those things. But, ultimately, especially given certain NCAA and conference restrictions, it's hard to know exactly where everyone's at. And so as they come in from a physical preparation side, it's basically to me a 2-week assessment period where for the first 2 weeks of our programming and our conditioning, we're going to be taking a good look at where we think you are currently and obviously where we need to get you to and then just fill in the gaps from there. And I think that's ultimately what programming is anyways, right? We know where you need to be and when you need to be at those places from a physical, preparation side. We know where you're at currently. We know a timeline from then and here, and we got to fill in those gaps and do it safely and responsibly. And then obviously squeeze all the juice out of the lemon that we can get, right? We want to put on the weight. If we got to put on the weight, we got to get you, like all the things we have to do, but we have to do it, in an appropriate manner. And then from a psychology side, I think that's actually going to be the toughest challenge. I think guys are going to be excited to be back together. They're going to be excited to play. But I think it's almost managing some of that excitement and enthusiasm with the obviously restrictions and the protocols that COVID create around us. Every process has changed from the moment that before you even step on campus, right? From the moment you leave your room, you got to have a mask on. And then everything in between that, from the time you get on the court, there's a new process that guys just got to get used to. Administrators got to get used to, coaches got to get used to. And then you throw on top of that, we don't really know when seasons are going to start and all of that. And so, how do you manage the enthusiasm and then obviously like the staleness of the programming? Like I'm open with our guys about that. I said, guys, if we don't play games until February or March, and I'm just throwing this out there, I have no insider information, but, and just fundamentally, if we're not playing games until then, and we've already talked about how training, the weight room training is not something that's innate to the basketball culture. So now we have to force this thing into your basketball culture and usually the game was the reward, right? You understand, well, maybe I don't want to lift weights, but I know I need it to get better, and ultimately I got to play a game. Well, that game is very far away now. And so how do we keep you energetic and excited to train and work on things when the ultimate goal is so far away? And then you start to appreciate the fact that, like, we stopped playing in March. So if you don't play again until February, I mean, you're talking about 10, 11 months, depending on when things shake out, of not playing real games. I think it's going to be a challenge for all parties involved to make sure that, we're excited to come to work and train and get better every day because ultimately for these guys, if your goal, which it is for them, if your goal is the NBA anyways, then whether we start games tomorrow or in March, that doesn't matter. The goal every day is just get better. Because ultimately your goal is a bigger thing anyways, right? It's past college anyways. So I think it's just getting them to understand those items. Like regardless of when we play games, the goal every day when you wake up is to get a little bit better so you can get a little bit closer to your ultimate goal, which is play at the next level.
Yeah, that self-awareness is very key, and they have to have that North Star or they get lost kind of, right? And keeping them on track is difficult when there's a lot of distractions, obviously, especially at a time like now. Just in general with like motivation, obviously, you just talked about those guys want to get into the NBA. They got, a lot of games and, maybe they peak in, December, but then you got to hold on to that or go up and down flow until February. Who knows? March, who knows, right? And fingers crossed that's not the case. But those guys have a motivation that's a little more innate. And, when they get onto the court, lights are on them and everything. That motivation's there. For you, though, on the bench, watching what's going on, of course, strength and conditioning coaches, performance coaches, we get fired up when we see our guys do well. What gets you motivated to get in there early in the morning, get those guys going, come in every day and just, rock and roll?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's appreciating that I have an opportunity to make them better in life. Like that would be the goal, right? And I tell my guys all the time, if all you learn from me is how to trap bar deadlift or how to put more weight on the trap bar because you're stronger, like if that's all you're learning from me, then I certainly don't feel like I'm fulfilling my mission. Maybe I'm taking the box from a from a, you know, paycheck perspective, and that's what I'm getting paid to do. But, you know, I don't think that's the case. I think that especially at this level, when support staffs are much smaller at the college level than at the NBA level. So given the smaller staff, everybody gets to wear, you know, a little bit, you know, wear a few more hats and ultimately try to create a little bit more impact and bring more value to the organization in that individual player's life. And so for me, that's the goal. You know, every time the alarm clock goes off, you know, I think it's just appreciating that I have an opportunity today to impact somebody's life. And it's not just anybody. It happens to be a young kid who has an extremely bright future, who's already achieved something incredible to get to one of the best college basketball programs historically you've got here. But how do I help, right, springboard that to the next step? And then how do we instill bigger items into them? Like, you know, when I tell my guys, like, hey, let's get you to the NBA. That's fun. And then let's start building your habits so that you can own an NBA team one day, right? You start to look across the NBA landscape or the professional athlete landscape. I mean, super relevant and timely for this, but like Patrick Mahomes is investor, part owner of the Kansas City Royals, right? And so you start to look at some of these things that are occurring. It's like, yo, this is beautiful, right? Like the days of just being an athlete are old, and like you're no longer just the athlete. In fact, if you are just the athlete, your peers are probably looking at you like, yo, what are you doing? You should be investing. You should be doing this. What about this? You got, I mean, CP3, I think, and some of the peers in the NBA just are dropping like a cartoon show. Obviously, LeBron's known for what he's doing, both in obviously his charity work and what he gives away, but also what he builds. Uninterrupted. KD's got a show. Like, people are doing a lot of things, and so I try to tell my guys the same. Like, don't lose sight. You have to focus on the game, because if you don't get to the next level, that's the bigger problem. Because the platform you are allowed once you get there, that allows you to do those things, right? Like Patrick Mahomes could not have invested in a baseball team if he did not first sign a $500 million contract. So you can't lose the work, and they know that, and I preach that every day. But also, don't be so closed off to what your goals are. Make them bigger, like make them more ambitious. And I think just you can see I get excited about it now. Just when I wake up to be able to tell guys that, and I mean I got one of my guys yesterday. He's sending me, we're talking stocks, and he's sending me a stock. He's on Instagram, and like I'm like, yo, imagine that. Like that's probably a conversation that maybe that kid would never have. But now that's a conversation we're going to continue to have. So I just think stuff like that is like it's invaluable. It's extremely valuable. And you never know where it goes. I think that's the most, interesting part of it. Like my goal now is 10 years from now, I hope that these players reach back out and say, you know, coach, you changed my life. Like if I don't get that text, then I failed my mission.
Yeah. I mean, at that young and impressionable age, any kind of, you know, authority figure or something they look up to, but one that helps them grow, not only within the sport, because I mean, yeah, that's why they're there. And we say student athlete, right? But it's more athlete, you know, when you get down to it. I mean, you're going to class and things of that nature, but I know from my perspective in baseball, we have 56 games in one spring semester. It's hard as it is. You know, you're missing classes, things of that nature. You're, you know, trying to read on a bus is terrible. Trying to type anything on a bus is terrible, right? Much less when you're playing, you know, the creme de la creme competition. There's stress every night. You got to manage your sleep. You got to manage your nutrition, like we talked about. There's so many different avenues for athletes to get into, like you said, finances, into more entrepreneurial work, more philanthropic stuff. What is, if you had, and this is a top of the dome question, what's one of the weirdest or strangest or most bizarre kind of avenues you've seen a guy get into? Do you have any artists or anything like that, or any abstract guys?
I don't know if there's been any like strange things. Certainly, you know, especially in the NBA, you know, half the guys think they're rappers. So there's drop. And I've been fortunate to actually work with some good rappers. Like I think Iman Shumpert's actually a really good rapper. Marvin Bagley could actually rap a little bit. So, you know, that's fun. Artists, obviously, for sure, as far as like actually painting and drawing and then that stuff. And all to like George Hill. George Hill has a ranch with like zebras. Like in San Antonio. So like, I mean, that's probably one of the extremes, but like he's got like wild exotic animals on a ranch and he loves hunting. And then you got all the way the other end, obviously, with some of the things we just talked about, rapping or visual production and directing and producing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's fun, man. It's fun to watch these guys express all of those other things that are interesting to them, right? Like, as normal, as normal non-professional, you totally appreciate the value of having hobbies and interests. But for some reason, when we start to look at athletes, we have this concept that they need to just focus on the sport. And I think that's just backwards. It's like, why? Like, let's just appreciate that I can't be that good at basketball and focus on other things, which is why I'm the strength coach, but you can be, and awesome. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, you need a different outlet besides your sport, right? Like when you're stressed or when you need something idle or novel to do, you can't just go out and shoot hoops or go do some hill sprints.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
I love that. Like,
difficult.
they're all playing video games now, and you get like random people on Twitter or whatever, social media saying, that's why they lose. He should focus on the game. And it's like, you can't go and get shots up for 24 hours out of the day. Like, that's backwards. So I just, there's like you with the de-stress too, right? It's a way you have to de-stress, you have to deload. And as a strength, we certainly appreciate those concepts.
We're broken records when it comes to nutrition and sleep and hydration, obviously. Do you have any strategies for like retention of that, or are you just pounding into their brains and making sure that they're doing it? Or is it one of those things too? And not to get too long with the question, but like, hey man, you didn't sleep last night and you're like moving like so slow. Here is XYZ showing you're slow. Like, what's your attitude with that?
The sleep stuff is definitely hard, so I focus a lot more on the nutrition.
Okay.
Sleep, we certainly focus on sleep hygiene and quality and quantity. Like, those are the things that obviously I think most people harp on. And for me, both, whether it's sleep, nutrition, or any other kind of ancillary thing to the weight room and ultimately performance, I think it's just constant messaging and then doing it in like kind of tidbits of information. So, like, I have some general rules. For me is like constant messaging. So if you say it once, say it like 10 times throughout the season, just stay on it so that it hits home, right? If you say it once and you never bring it back up, well, it probably wasn't that valuable. But if I constantly tell you that calories are king and we need to make sure we're getting our calories, and then we check your weight, 2 to 3 times a week, and we reinforce that. And every time you step on the scale, if the weight is down, I remind you to eat. Like, those things have to be constant. And then again, like tidbits of information, because you can't spend 35 minutes giving them a lecture on nutrition, but I could spend, after a lift, we'll do a little whiteboard session, and I could spend 5 minutes reminding you of some constant messaging, and then maybe throwing something new or novel in there. I ask questions a lot. That's one way to try to get it to, kind of stick with them. You ask something simple like, hey, so-and-so, how many grams of protein should you have today? And then all the other guys start chiming in and trying to figure it out. And they're all wrong. And then you just tell them the right answer. You ask that same thing the next day, right? Like, is it sticking? Is it sticking? Okay, cool. Like, we understand that. Okay. Well, what's an approach to actually handle that? Well, post shake after the lift. Are they doing that right now? If they're not, can we get them to do that? Can we keep harping on that? Once we have that, can we also communicate to have another shake some other time when you wake up before bed? Are you doing that? Are you doing that? Hey, I gave you a protein powder that had 30 servings in it, and I got a note on my phone that says check up on the protein status, and you haven't asked me for more protein, which tells me that you haven't been drinking your protein. Damn, coach, now it's about halfway. Okay, well, let's get it to all the way down. Like, so just being constant, focusing on a few things, and then delivering it with, kind of some succinctness to it, so that it's not just elaborate messaging, because they can't. I mean, there's a lot. Like, one thing I have grown to appreciate is how much all athletes have to take on. If it's at the NBA level, it's your game, it's your practice, it's the drills, it's the complexity of the strategy to win games, right? The tactics of winning. But then they also have events. They also have community events. They also have agent relationships. They have family relationships. They have these other hobbies and other interests that they want to take on. There's a lot that goes into those guys. Same thing here, right? I mean, as a former college athlete, it's not just school and sports. It's school, sports, relationships, exams, family. We still do community outreach and do some of those events. It's constant communication with coaches. It's film. There's a lot that goes at no matter what level. If you want to be a high achiever, there's a lot that's going into your brain every day. And I think it's on me as a strength coach that if I want to take up space in that day and in that kind of information zone, it better come in an effective and efficient manner.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Time management, self-management. That's right. Yeah. And yeah, same approach, just making sure we're peppering stuff. I really think like asking questions and just probing is really an art with a lot of athletes too. And again, going back to building rapport, being human and building relationships. If you know how to ask a question to an athlete, you can get a ton of information. But if it's your first week and you don't really have a good relationship with them, asking any question, you kind of just get a little bit of here, a little bit of there, and you kind of let them grow on you and you grow on them, of course. With the survey that you mentioned before, you talked a lot about the setup there. With the validity of that, of course, do you have the same survey every time? And basically they can just run through it blind because they know how they're feeling. They can verbalize it. What's the idea behind, just getting the wellness survey when they walk in?
Yeah. So actually in Sacramento, that's what we did. We had a wellness survey, and all I did was print it. It's funny. You have so many long-winded discussions and even debates about the best delivery of how to get this information, right? Oh, is it pen and paper? Is it a clipboard? Who does it?
You get it.
Just get it. And for me, my environment became much easier to actually just print it on a piece of paper, laminate that, tape it on the backside of a clipboard, walk up and show them and write the score down, hand that to the data, analyst or an intern, have them plug that in every day and get some basic charts going just so we can see and visualize this information, probably pairing it with other information. And so, in Sacramento, we got down to just 3 questions. I think we did a 1 to 5 scale. And it gets to the point where guys walk in and before you even show them, they throw their numbers out to you. And that actually becomes really effective and efficient because one, they're bought in when they start doing that. But also oftentimes would lead to the second kind of conversation of why those scores are occurring. So like player might come in and say, yo, Ram, I'm like 2 on the sleep, man. I could not sleep last night. And he's already telling me these things. And I'm like, damn, okay, well, what happened? I don't know, man. It was tossing it, like whatever the excuse is, that's what we wanted anyways. We wanted that information. So, I think, if somebody's listening to this and they're looking for ways to implement this, I would say you can even, I would argue, get down to one question, like a simple question of, are you ready to train today? And that could be weight room and court. Are you ready to train today? Maybe yes or no, or maybe like a 3, type of like, how enthusiastic are you to train today? And now we can kind of go motivated, average, or demotivated, not motivated. And those might be enough because the follow-up is what's important anyways, right? You're going to have to ask, well, why is that? Man, I'm turned up today, coach. I'm excited. Well, why? I just got out of this film session with coach, man. I'm excited. He told me some things I could work on. I'm going to get to work today. Okay, cool. Coach, I'm like, today, what happened? Man, my girl always, okay, cool. Like now we know. And so, however you get it, just get it.
No, that root cause is so important. How do you deal with athletes who are like at that 5 pretty constantly? They're always chipper. They're always ready to go. They're never having a bad day. Do you just let them ride, or of course it's a case by case basis, right?
Yeah, I think probably let it ride until you have a good enough rapport to actually challenge them on that because nobody's perfect. And so if you're getting that every day, it probably means that it's not sincere. And so maybe trying to figure out why they say that every day and probably do it in a positive fashion rather than saying like, that's bullshit. You're not always 5, but like, yo, man, I notice you're always upbeat. Like, is that like something that you've always been, or is that like, are your parents always upbeat? And maybe that, gets you deeper into the conversation of knowing that individual and where that's coming from. And maybe he says, well, nah, coach, it's just, I know my role. Like, I don't really play a lot. So I know my role is to bring energy in the weight room, bring energy in practice. And I just want to buy into that role.
That's important too.
Great. Yeah. And then, but there's also an opportunity, I think, for you as a coach to appreciate that and know that even though he's telling me those things, there might be some days where he's not. And can we get in those? So it could be like, hey, I know that's your role. I know that's your responsibility. Buy into it. I'm excited about that. But certainly when you're not feeling like a 5, let me know. Like, and we could leave it on, if you're afraid of the sheet, because some players are afraid where the information goes, we could leave it on a 5, but ultimately I want the information to know how I can prepare and adapt what I do with you. And so just trying to get to that. So, and I think I've gotten to a place with players where they understand those differences, right? Are you giving me something because you think it's being used for something else? Or are you giving me information because I ultimately care about you and want to use it to help you? When you get there, guys will be, I think, really sincere. And that's when you'll stop seeing a 5 every single day.
Yeah, Yeah. I think one of the things that doesn't get discussed is, as a strength coach, especially, what are you doing with your own training? Like, how are you moving around? Are you just like, is it dog meat? Like whatever you got going on is whatever it is, or are you following something right now? What's the latest with what Ramsey Nijem himself has going on?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'm following a program that I wrote, and I have a couple buddies that I train with here, one of our coaches. And so, we'll switch it around fairly often. But yeah, so the current program we're on, I mean, we stick with the traditionals. There's squatting, there's benching, there's deadlifting. We got barbell split squats in there. We move a lot more, so we're doing a lot more movement-based stuff as well. Which really for me just means jumping around the weight room. So we got different jumping movements in there. And then we got some finishers. We got, got to get a little arm farm in there, of course.
Right.
Little
gun show action.
Through like today probably looked like CrossFit at the end. Like we went something, then we just did 5x5, just hang clean to press, 5x5 every minute on the minute. Something to get the heart rate up. Like that's another thing that, I think it's actually easy to not get your heart rate up as a strength coach because it's natural on there and just, get your lift in. Like I'm gonna just go 5x5 on the bench today. I'm probably gonna chill, check Instagram, talk to someone. And then you justify it by saying, well, I just got to get stronger anyways. That's my goal anyway. So, but for me, that's not necessarily the only goal. Like I want to get my heart rate up. I want to challenge myself and I want to, my own programming becomes some of the concepts that I'm playing around with for our upcoming season, right? I want to put myself through some of these things before I put these guys through it. So challenging the creativity of your own program, I think actually helps with what you put your athletes through.
There's some efficacy in that where you see a lot of coaches possibly, and you never know, right? But they're just throwing stuff out that they've never done before. They've never felt what it is. So they don't know what the adaptation or response is. They don't know what's going on. If you can feel it a little bit, you know what's going on, then you have that firsthand experience and you're like, this is a little spicier than I thought it would be, and then, you got a game that weekend is bad news. Yeah. But,
and being able to tell guys too, I think like, I'm putting my guys through some tempo work right now and it's miserable. Like, damn. I'm like, yo, that shit sucks, right? I know I just did that this morning. That's terrible. But when you're able to tell them, like, I just put myself through that too, they appreciate it a little bit more. So yeah, I mean, I think we're all able to call out the guy who just put shit on the paper and it's clear he hasn't actually tried to do that or feels like.
Yeah. How important do you think it is to lead from the front where they see you lifting sometimes or they know you got, you can bounce a little bit, you can sprint, you can move around, you still got that cat in you. How important do you think it is to the dudes you're coaching and of course the coaching staff as well? I
want to appreciate, obviously, there's really good coaches who are much older than me. And so for some of them, they probably had that quote unquote cat in them back in the day, but maybe they don't now. But certainly for me, I think it's extremely important. Every part of kind of that spectrum of movement. So in the weight room, obviously doing the movements, demoing it, making sure it looks good, being able to do it quick, on the pop, on the fly, whatever I need them to do, can I demo it so it's visual? You got to be able to cue it so it's audible. The buy-in factor when you actually look good when you do it. And then because I'm a basketball junkie, after every practice, I'm guarding somebody, right? I'm getting big ball. So when our guards try to get in their bag on you and you slide the feet and you bump and like, oh, damn, okay, he can move a little bit, okay. And certainly with basketball coaches, that's all the buy-in. They don't care what you do in the weight room. You got to be able to kind of show them that you can do it or you at least understand it on the court.
Right. You can breathe it a little bit, right? That's all I got for you. Again, want to honor your time. Thank you so much. Just want to roll out, what you got going on platform-wise with social. And that's all. Again, thank you so much. That's all I got for you, Coach Nijem.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the time and you guys, letting me get on here and share and talk a little shop. So stay safe and healthy. And again, thank you.
You too. Where can they find you on social?
Dr.Ramsey.Nijem is Instagram. I think Twitter is just Dr. Ramsey Nijem. I spend much more time on Instagram than Twitter. So yeah, reach out there if you're inclined to.
Again, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Ciao.